think that it might be interesting to make a really serious study of propaganda.
I find it interesting, and there's plenty to study. Here I have just a few of the many books on the subject. You can read them. You can keep your eyes and ears open for little bits of propaganda. And, of course, you can study whole propaganda campaigns.
The CIA literally ran mind control experiments called MKUltra. It's not just a theory, it's declassified. There's hidden civilizations beyond Antarctica. We sunk the Titanic in order to create the Federal Reserve. Operation Mockingbird changed journalism forever. The media is not just news, it's narrative. Our presidents are just puppets. We are in the middle of a spiritual war consisting of soul-level warfare and energy manipulation.
Every family, every name you want to call in this world that you think is a shadowy organization answers to Pepe Orsini. Pepe Orsini is the owner of planet Earth.
This seems like a great time to remind everyone that the Attorney General of Florida from 2011 to 2019, while Epstein was running his children's sex ring, was Pam Bondi.
Russian men have created a perpetual motion machine and installed it in a car, and the result will surprise you greatly.
Look at this. This is the third or fourth dead snapping turtle, a protected species, by the way, that has been turning up in these rivers right after they've been spraying a harmful chemical in these rivers.
Trump just pardoned the woman who had fetuses in her refrigerator.
The top image is a map of people who have mysteriously gone missing, a large portion of which have been children, and the bottom map is America's largest cave systems, and a lot of this overlaps with national forests.
You have to be so careful of the feral people in the Appalachian Mountains. Australia, Canada, Germany, Denmark, France, the UK, and Finland all just issued travel advisory warnings against the United States.
You just don't have Christian coochie.
Do you remember when Elon Musk did a full-on Nazi salute twice on stage at the inauguration and then went to a Nazi rally in Germany and told them that they shouldn't be ashamed of their Nazi heritage?
I rebuke that loose, stinky coochie.
White people didn't undergo 250 years of slavery and its aftermath. White people didn't suffer through racial segregation. White people didn't have a government that restricted their ability to own property, open a business, or own a bank account to grow generational wealth for their children and their children's children.
These boxes contain 19 heads that were dismembered off of 19 black people who were from New Orleans, the youngest being 15 years old. The heads were then sent to a university in Germany and experimented on for years to see if black people's brains were smaller than white people's brains.
For you pay first?
I'm not paying first. You did not make these white people sit there and pay, and I love white people. But you did not just make none of these white people sit here and pay before you told them they gotta eat before they ate. That's crazy. You never have to pay before you eat.
Hello. That is wild, though. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So if you ready to be racist, just let me know, cause you don't even fucking on here yourself.
We're not even gonna eat here. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. You might have to pay, but then I have y'all pay. Yeah.
So we still gotta pay first? We still gotta pay first?
For context, if you know anything about European history, then you know about the Medicis. The Medici were once a very, very powerful family. But you see, the thing is, Medicis were bankers, and there are some rumors that said they were Jews who pretended to be Christians. But anyways, Medici's biggest rival was a family that had like noble blood, and they were bankers too, but they did not do usury. Keyword here is usury. Usury is the main thing that is banned in Islam, in Christianity. That was why Jesus went and tore up the money changers, is basically usury. So the Orsinis didn't do usury. So that's how Medicis came and overtook them by doing usury. They had so much money. They had all the PayPal accounts. But anyways, long story short, that family realized something and they made moves. They made moves. Fast forward today, I need you to go to Google right now and Google Grey Pope, Grey, not just Google, any website you can go to that search engine and Google and search for Grey Pope. So if you don't know, there are 3 popes in this world. Like, there are 3 types of pope. There's a white pope, a black pope, and a gray pope. The white pope is the one that is public facing. That is the one that everybody knows. The current one is the American guy who just got elected. That's the white pope. The black pope is usually the leader of the Jesuit order. Think Mormons. The black pope is the one who is in charge of all the clandestine issues in the Vatican. They had the Jesuits. They're basically Jesuits. They're the military arm. They're the secretive arm. Anytime you hear Vatican Church, like, fucking little boys, and the Black Pope is the one that handles all of that shit. And then you have the Grey Pope. Who's the Grey Pope? Well, the Grey Pope, the Black Pope, and the White Pope both answer to the Grey Pope. The Grey Pope is always going to come from one family. That is the Orsini family. And right now, the leader of the Orsini family is a man named Pepe. We don't know who's going to take over when Pepe dies, but yeah, the Orsini family, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, everybody answers to Pepe Orsini. In case you were wondering the name of the man that rules you and rules everybody, his name is Pepe Orsini.
They said that these communications showed a close personal relationship and a profound friendship between the two guys. And Epstein, this is where the client list comes in. He sent them photos of young women, and in 2010, Staley replied with creepy Disney codes. Rob, can you go to that? He literally says, maybe they're tracking you. Say hi to Snow White. And Epstein follows with, what character would you like next? Okay. And then Staley says, Beauty and the Beast. And Epstein responds, well, one side is available. Okay. That's not banter. That's sex trafficking lingo in plain sight. Okay. And the worst part, the date stamps on those emails line up with the money that Epstein sent from his JP Morgan account to the same girl. Okay. So that's your paper trail.
What an all-American guy. Is that your new boyfriend? No, it's Ross Ulbricht. He was in prison for life, but was just pardoned by Trump. What the hell did he do? FBI uncovered his website on the dark web, where it was kind of like Amazon, and they sold assault weapons. No, and drugs, like a lot of drugs. They even sold fake IDs. These all look very valid, and it's all his picture in a different name. Sean David Lake, that's not his name. There's one from the UK as well, but at least they didn't sell child porn, because that's what I was anticipating. Oh no, he sold that too. Yeah. But he's free amongst us now.
Do you remember how this president seemingly couldn't wait to start committing crimes? That the moment after he was sworn into office, he tried to freeze federal funds, and Congress had to get involved and say, you can't do that, that's against the law. Do you remember that? Do you remember how when Pete Hegseth was interviewing for Secretary of Defense, he said, if I get the job, I'll stop drinking. And then at his very first press conference, he pulled a whiskey glass out from the podium and started drinking on stage, on camera, in front of everyone, because that's how much of a dangerous, reckless alcoholic this man is. He could not make it through a single press conference without having to have a drink. Do you remember when that same dangerous, reckless alcoholic included a reporter from The Atlantic on a text thread on Signal talking about plans to bomb an apartment complex in Yemen? And when he was confronted about it, he called that reporter a liar and a sleazebag, and then just a couple days later admitted that yes, that actually did happen. Do you remember that? Do you remember how Doge started firing people by sending them emails and saying, justify your job to us in this email or you're fired, only to later find out that they accidentally had fired a bunch of people they couldn't afford to fire because those people were in charge of like monitoring the safety of our nuclear silos, and then they had to beg those people to come back to work? Do you remember when this administration first started floating the idea of shipping prisoners off to foreign prison camps, and we said, you can't do that, and their followers said, don't worry, they're not going to do that. And then they immediately started doing that. And then in one case, a federal judge got involved and said, tell me what this man did wrong. And they said, well, he's a member of the gang MS-13. And the judge said, can you prove that? And they couldn't prove it. So the judge issued a stay, and they ignored the stay and shipped the man off to a foreign torture camp anyway. And then a report came out showing that 75% of the people that we have shipped off to foreign torture camps were kidnapped, detained without due process. These are people with legal documentation, with no criminal record, who have been shipped off to prison camps. And this is going on right now actively. Do you remember that? Do you remember how for months on the campaign trail, all of the world's leading economists said that tariffs would be disastrous for the global economy, but nobody could have possibly predicted how bad they would actually be, because nobody could have predicted how bad the administration would be at math, that there would be no one in the entire cabinet, in the entire administration who would know how to calculate a tariff, that they'd just be like, I don't know, what if we took the trade deficit, turned it into a percentage, divided it by 2 and called that the tariff? And everyone would just be like, yeah, that sounds like numbers to me. That there would be no one in the entire administration who could step in and say, no, you guys, that's not how you calculate a tariff. That's not how you calculate anything. That's not even how math works. You're just taking random numbers and doing random things to them. That's nothing. Do you remember that? Because all of that happened in like the last 3 months. That is all incredibly recent human history, and I don't think I covered even half of it. So, you know, just like, holy shit.
But here's the craziest thing about Bill Clinton. So he goes to Princeton, instantly he gets an SA charge, if you know what I'm talking about, the SA charge, right? So you study these guys, they have that thing that happens early on in their life, so now they got something they can control you with.
Yeah, especially when you're younger, more vulnerable, and it's like, listen, we'll promise you all these things.
Yeah.
Do what we need you to do, pull the right triggers, we'll take care of you.
So the investigation of the JFK assassination was done by the Warren Committee. There was one guy in the entire committee that said, no, this isn't the real story. One guy voted no. That guy one day got in a plane and was never heard from again. He disappeared. Do you know who drove him to the airport?
Oh, what?
Bill Clinton.
No way.
What? Yes. Shoot. Yeah.
Clintons, man.
Dude.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah, dude. It's really crazy if you study it because everything is data, dude.
Yeah.
Can they compromise you sexually? Are you a psychopath? Would you just commit horrible crimes against your own family just to get ahead? And most of these people would do it and not even think twice about it.
Oh, gosh, that's so evil.
Now they're being returned to New Orleans 150 years later. Let's get started and learn something new. Before I get into the origin of the New Orleans schools, I want to talk about the fact that this university in Germany called Leipzig University is home to a skull collection that dates back to the end of the 19th century and originally comprised of over 1,500 skulls. The most extensive holdings, with around 1,300 skulls from more than 40 countries, date back over 130 years. Why do y'all have so many skulls? We don't even need to answer that. It's a rhetorical question. Between 1871 and 1872, those 19 black people passed away in a charity hospital in New Orleans, and then their heads were taken to a university in Germany and experimented on to see if black people's brains were smaller than other races. In the 1880s, Dr. Henry D. Schmidt, a New Orleans physician, sent the skulls to Dr. Emil Ludwig Schmidt. They were taken from the bodies of 13 men, 4 women, and 2 unidentified people. Less than 2 years ago, that university reached out to the city of New Orleans to see if they were ready to start the repatriation process. And within 2 years, the city of New Orleans had a committee ready to go to accept these skulls back. And they attempted unsuccessfully to contact descendants of the victims. They were able to find out the names of the deceased and their ages ranging from 15 to 70, and what they died from and how long they had been in New Orleans before they passed away. In one instance, one of the people had been in New Orleans for only 1 hour before passing away, and only 5 of the identified people were from Louisiana. The others were from Virginia, North Carolina, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Kentucky. Adam Grant, Isaac Bell, Hiram Smith, William Pearson, Henry Williams, John Brown, Hiram Malone, William Roberts, Alice Brown, Priscilla Hatchett, Marie Louise, Mahala, Samuel Prince, John Tolman, Henry Allen, Moses Willis, and Henry Anderson. Just last Saturday, they were memorialized and finally laid to rest 154 years later. The remains will be stored in the Hurricane Katrina Memorial. The New Orleans committee members said, "This is not simply about bones and artifacts. It is not only about injustices. This is about restoring and, in many ways for us here, celebrating our humanity. It is about confronting a dark chapter in medical and scientific history and choosing instead a path of justice, honor, and remembrance. And we will do so in the most sacred way we know how, in a true New Orleans fashion, with a jazz funeral that shows the world that these people mattered. They belonged. They belonged here, and now they are home."
I'm sick of them coming out there and even to get to the president to say, why are you guys still talking about it? Why are you talking about it? You know why? Because the proof is there and there's victims. That's what drives me crazy, Pat. You see the body language. What about all the girls? What about all the young boys? And not just the Virginia Goofreets who, God rest their souls, died. What about the ones, Pat, that we'll never hear from? We have, in 4 years, 350,000 kids missing. I totally believe that the majority of these people that they hooked up with, they kill them. What are they going to do? Rape and molest all these kids and just let them walk? No, they have to get rid of them. They have to. That proves the Jess Daily thing, that there was a freaking client list. So don't tell me you can't build a case. Don't lie to us. Alex Acosta said, Pat, the guy worked for intelligence. He worked for intelligence. If it was CIA and with Mossad, okay, so let's play devil's advocate. If Epstein worked for Mossad and the whole thing was a blackmail from the start, who's holding all the cards? If Mossad set up a ring to record underage kids getting sex trafficked, to have sex with powerful people, who's holding the cards, Tom? Mossad and the CIA. So that means these people were okay with kids getting trafficked and sexed and raped for power moves. I am not comfortable with that. When people go, well, that's how the world works and that's a battle. Bullshit.
some buildings from the Civil War. Let me just show you a couple buildings from the Civil War. See kind of stuff like that? We're in 1897. This is 1897. But these are buildings from the time of also the Civil War as well. Now, obviously, they're not going to tell people that because they had to tell people that they were carrying around a bunch of wagons and trying to fight each other with, a bunch of cannons, which make no sense to shoot cannons at each other. But a lot of the old world in the South is all still there. And then what they called these buildings, they turned them into plantations. That's what it was. They were turned into plantations. And that's old world buildings just being turned into something else and then given a different story. What's happened is there's been multiple resets where they have gotten rid of a lot of these old world buildings so that people are believing a narrative that they've been sold by John D. Rockefeller. Because remember, John D. Rockefeller owns the General Education Board. So John D. Rockefeller is going to teach you the history. And then before John D. Rockefeller was J.P. Morgan Chase. So you got bankers and oil tycoons who are teaching you history.
These videos are extremely disrespectful.
This is not my usual kind of video, but to be honest, I couldn't scroll past this without saying something. Now this clip is probably hard to follow because of the way that I cut it up, but we can see this guy holding something that he's going to give to this little kid, and this guy recording. He hands off this object, walks out of frame, the camera guy gets a few seconds of footage, and then he comes back, rescinds that gift, and then just walks off. I'm not going to put any individual creators on blast, but I feel like this type of content has been on the rise lately, being the fake humanitarian effort videos. These content creators will just film videos of them pretending to help people, oftentimes doing more hurt than good, just so they can line their pockets a little bit more and look good and score some social points. I mean, this video, this guy literally brings the water all the way back instead of just giving it to the kid. He doesn't even leave it. He makes it worse. So if you see videos of people helping the homeless or rescuing animals, think critically on whether or not this is a real situation. Because lately it feels like more often than not, the intention of these videos is not genuine. After all, a wise man once said, if a camera wasn't there, did it really happen?
The FBI is asking the public to stop solving crimes before they do. I don't even care if this is real or not because these comments are hilarious. No. Not a chance. My personal favorite, stop being useless and we wouldn't have to do your job for you. Is this actually a thing? Looked up what are some cases that were solved by internet sleuths thinking it was just going to be like the stuff that we've seen on Netflix. No, y'all, this is like a long list. It's thousands of cases that have been solved by just random people, including kidnappings, identifying an SKULL that was found in concrete, the Tammy Joe Alexander case, the cat killer case that was then turned into a Netflix documentary, thousands of missing persons who have now been identified, including a ton of other missing persons found bodies. Like, this is great. No wonder the FBI was at it, but like, why would they? I don't know if it's a joke. It was a funny joke, but this was crazy to see how many like random Joe Smos have actually solved cases.
The guys from the Garage 54 YouTube channel watched a viral video in which some guy was able to create an engine that worked only thanks to springs. But unlike the video, the Russian men decided to install this engine in the car and see if the car could go. They did all the necessary calculations and started assembling the perpetual motion machine, demonstrating the wonders of engineering. A few days later, everything was ready, and after installing the springs, the perpetual motion machine started working and began to rotate. It remains to put the engine in the car and see if it can go. It's amazing, but just 4 springs are enough to set an entire car in motion. Yes, you won't be able to drive very fast, but at the same time, you don't need electricity or fuel. Russian men have created a perpetual motion machine and installed it in a car, and the result will surprise you greatly. The guys from the Garage 54 YouTube channel watched a viral video in which some guy was able to create an engine that worked only thanks to springs. But unlike the video, the Russian men decided to install this engine in the car and see if the car could go. They did all the necessary calculations and started assembling the perpetual motion machine, demonstrating the wonders of engineering. A few days later, everything was ready, and after installing the springs, the perpetual motion machine started working and began to rotate. It remains to put the engine in the car and see if it can go. It's amazing, but just 4 springs are enough to set an entire car in motion. Yes, you won't be able to drive very fast, but at the same time, you don't need electricity or fuel.
Somebody from the UK saw strawberries here in the United States and wondered why our strawberries are white from the inside. So you know how when you cut your strawberries, usually it's red around, but the middle part, it's white. So check this out.
Another case in point. They are
white. Why is it white? Another example of what the strawberries look like.
They're mostly like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I'm not gonna say what it looks like, but you know what I'm thinking. I might head over to America in a minute. What? Why are they white? It's a side-by-side of what our UK strawberries.
What the
Is that
hell?
what they're called? I
That's insane, right? It's fully red.
don't know English strawberries look like. This is America. They are definitely putting something in them. Strawberries are meant to be juicy, succulent,
Look at that,
red.
no white.
Americans, I hate to tell you, but I think they're putting something in your strawberries because that is not a strawberry. It's just not. It's not. Why is it white in the inside? What the hell is going on over America? I would love to go over there, but seeing this is what fruits look like over there, I'm concerned about what they're injecting into those things. I knew Americans.
It's crazy. They say that a lot of our fruit currently right now, it's all like
lab made.
Not lab made, right? But it's been like tampered with.
No, I wouldn't doubt it.
You know how there's a lot of fruits now that hardly have seeds?
All right, I want you guys to have a look at this. This is at a McDonald's playground where children are caged in between the burger. Now, let me just start by saying this is for entertainment purposes only, guys. But I want you to think very critically right now. This was displayed in one of the signs at McDonald's. Our secret ingredient is our people. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there was a massive investigation not too long ago that found, the fact checkers obviously are like, no, that's not true, blah, 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 but like, you guys know about the Red Shoe Club? Now, I can't talk about these things here because I'm going to get banned and demonetized, but if you guys want to know the truth to what's going on with McDonald's and what is actually in their burgers, then comment the word truth, and I will send you an exclusive link to my inner circle where I can talk about what's really going on here. In recent reports from areas including Caddo Lake in East Texas, authorities have been spraying herbicides such as Roundup, glyphosate, and Diquat into waters to control invasive aquatic weeds. And we have protected alligator snapping turtles disintegrating after they're spraying this clearly harmful chemical into the water. Why would they be doing this, guys? And then all these weather events happening in Texas, put 2 and 2 together. It's right in your face, guys. When are we gonna stand up and say enough is enough? This is enough. Stop destroying our planet. What they are doing is trying to destroy us. Those with the eyes to see have been trying to warn you guys for so long what these people have been doing. This is crimes against humanity. This is crimes against nature, and we need to stand up.
Anti-abortion women would reportedly steal fetus remains from a medical waste truck and would park outside of a clinic. And she asked the driver if she could have the aborted fetuses so that she could give them a proper funeral, and the dude just gave her a box of them. They had around 115 fetuses that she just kept in her apartment, and Trump just pardoned her. So if you're wondering how we're doing, that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Are we great yet?
Gets weirder with the stories of children who have gone missing and then reappeared mysteriously. The first story is from 2010 when a 3-year-old boy was staying with his grandparents at a cabin in Mount Shasta, which, by the way, is one of the most active hotspots for weird disappearance. The boy's grandparents were watching him as he played in the backyard, but they looked away for allegedly just a moment, and when they looked back, the boy was gone. No screaming, no struggle, just vanished. The grandparents, friends, and family began to immediately comb through the forest and look everywhere for him with absolutely no sign. After a couple hours, the boy was found miles away in an area with such tough terrain, adults had a hard time getting there without gear, and it was too far for a toddler to walk in that amount of time, even on a flat paved road. Even stranger is that the boy had not a single scratch or bug bite, mark, dirt. He had no sunburn, literally no evidence he'd been exposed to the elements. No one has been able to come up with a semi-plausible human way he could have gotten there, but even crazier is the story he told of what happened. The boy said he was taken to a cave by his grandmother, but he knew something was off about her. Her eyes were mechanical, and he called her his robot grandmother. He claimed that the cave was filled with floating purses, spiders crawling all over the walls, and people not moving, scattered all about. Was laid on a glass table for observation and told something along the lines that he was made from the stars, and when he started to get nervous, he said his robot grandma let him leave, and that's when he was found.
Creator Anna Costley had a horrifying experience in her Airbnb. Her family had rented an Airbnb deep in the Appalachian Mountains, and the first few nights were fine until they started to sense a very creepy vibe. Her brother had found an old notebook at the kitchen counter, and the note read, "I could feel her watching. I know I shouldn't have looked. She was closer to the house than I expected. The creek covered the sound of her steps if they made a sound. The light in the trailer never turns off. I have a feeling she knows why." And then it's signed right here. That's when they realized that there was a creek outside. She looked beyond the trees and she saw a trailer. You can see it right there. She panicked and she thought, if the trailer light is on when the sun goes down, I'm done. That night, the trailer light was on. You can see through the window a single dim light. She had to sleep in the living room, completely exposed to that view. That's the trailer during the day. She had a constant fear that the lady by the creek was watching her at night. Everyone online was commenting, insisting that she needed to get out, but her parents were very adamant about staying 3 more nights. Then there was the smell. One night, her dad shot awake from sleep. He had smelled the worst thing that he had ever smelled. He had thought that something was maybe burning in the kitchen, but everyone was asleep. That's when he realized that the smell was coming from the window. Then there was the hairbrush. On the morning she left, she found a woman's hairbrush on the ground next to her truck. The brush still had hair in it, and none of the family recognized who the hair belonged to, or who the brush belonged to. She had walked past that area so many times during the trip, and it had never been there before. Her brother had picked it up, and she immediately told him that he needed to put it down.
Hey, do you know about the Back to the Future Trump 88 conspiracy theory and the Great Global Financial Reset? Watch this.
The Donald Trump Back to the Future rabbit hole continues. Let's get into it. So just the other day, you guys, it was the 40th anniversary for the classic movie Back to the Future, in which Marty McFly has to go 88 miles per hour, okay, 88, into the future and to the past to make time travel happen. Put a pin in that. In part 2, there is some serious parallels between Donald Trump and the villain Biff Tannen, where he becomes rich and powerful, almost like he was predicting that he was going to be POTUS one day. Now, this version of Biff Tannen, where he gives himself the almanac so he can get rich and powerful, this all has to do with wealth. Now, I said that the number in this movie is 88, 8 being the number of wealth, so here's the thing. If you've been paying attention, Trump keeps mentioning 88 over and over again.
Favorite check, the tariff line. They called me back an hour later. Sir, we've taken in $88 billion in tariffs. 11,888 murderers came into our country, and some we've already gotten out, but...
Now, if you paid attention to that last number, it's actually the same number as this executive order, 11888, signed by Ford, which has to do with taxes and tariffs and America's wealth. But that's where it just begins. And while all this is going on, at the same time, isn't it weird, after 14 years of being dormant, 8 wallets holding 80,000 Bitcoin worth $8 billion starts to move around again? What are the chances? Now, going back to the movie Back to the Future, again, some major parallels. Look at these headlines where it says Trump pulls off biggest upset, Hill Valley man wins, Biff wins again, Trump wins again, luckiest man on earth. Literally the same thing, saying luckiest man on earth, and the title says Back to the Future. Here's another weird thing. The character that was based off of Donald Trump, Biff Tannen, was born in 1937, in which 2025 makes him 88 years old. Not to mention, this same year that Marty McFly goes into the future, 2015, is the same year that Donald Trump runs for president and then later becomes president. And sidebar, 88 years ago, Amelia Earhart disappears, so there's that. Kind of random, but I thought that was pretty interesting too. All in all, my prediction is I think we're about to see something major in the financial world, maybe with crypto, with banks, something with money, so be on the lookout.
Just a chronic lack of development, lack of contributions to mankind. No inventions, no philosophers, no true great masterpiece. If half of Africa was super developed or halfway developed and the other half wasn't, maybe you'd have an argument whether they got colonized or not. Whether they got freed from slavery in 1800 or in 1860. It's the same story everywhere. There's not one written language among them. They don't have books. They don't have words. And there's billions of black people. They do have that lower level of development, and I think that's why they underperform.
White people didn't have to go through these things, so if we were just to ignore the fact that black people in America had to go through all of these things that have now systemically disadvantaged them even today, and we were instead to say, ignore one's race and treat everybody the same, well then all of a sudden black people will continue to be disparaged. Imagine if you were playing a game of Monopoly with your friends, the banker, for whatever reason, really fucking hated you. He only gave you $10, gave everyone else $50, right? Then Mr. Jesus 2.0, man of equality, walks in and he says, well, I understand that you've been disadvantaged. I have the option to now give you an additional $40 to account for the fact that the banker kind of cheated you out of $40 to begin with. But instead, I'm just going to continue to treat you the same way I'm going to treat everybody else. Well, then all of a sudden you're still experiencing a disadvantage today. And when we talk about programs or legislation to say target black Americans or target indigenous Americans, it aims to serve to fix the consequences of systemic forms of oppression in which have disadvantaged black Americans or indigenous Americans historically, which has perpetuated negative consequences that exist today for black Americans or indigenous Americans.
Where is Dr. Jonathan Caravello? He's a math professor at nearby Cal State Channel Islands, and when a tear gas canister landed under a wheelchair, leaving the person unable to breathe or move, he was trying to help the person when ICE tackled him, threw him in an unmarked car, and nobody's heard from him since. Where's disabled veteran George Rettis? He was working as a security guard and trying to leave when ICE smashed in his window, pepper sprayed him, and he hasn't been heard from since. What about Edgar Rodriguez? ICE pushed him to the ground, knelt on his head and neck, and handcuffed him. What was his offense? Well, when 10 unidentified men dressed in fatigue showed up driving unmarked vehicles, he asked them to identify themselves and show him a warrant. They then lied to him to get him to come outside and assaulted him. These are U.S. citizens, and Tom Holman said that ICE can detain any individual for any reason and should racially profile to get the job done. They are assaulting and disappearing U.S. citizens on the suspicion of being brown, which is why some local governments like the city of Paris, California, have urged residents who may be at risk to stay indoors if possible, and the Diocese of San Bernardino relieving some Catholics of their obligation to attend Mass.
Here are a few on which I've been gathering material. Hitler and Nazi Germany had a campaign of propaganda that ran over many years. Then there's a wealth of propaganda to study on the subject of Russia and communism. There's propaganda to study in our own American elections, national as well as local, and in many of the major issues on which elections often hinge.
Well, if I don't learn about propaganda, it won't be because there's no way to study it.
Remember the techniques of propaganda, and use the procedure we out is a powerful force.